All right, so for you guys on Zoom, again, just make sure if you haven't already, throw your name in the chat box so that I can check you off as having attended the class. So I guess maybe where I'll start is just any questions from what we talked about on Tuesday.
No, I don't have any.
Cool, thanks, Derek. All right. Well, let's do this then. What we're going to do is just a quick review of what we talked about on Tuesday, and then we'll continue on to what we have been talking about. So just remember, in fact, actually, let me ask this. We'll see how well you guys do. So we have more on Zoom than we do here in person. So we're relying on you guys again. What is the purpose of us sitting down with a client? So from what we talked about on Tuesday, do you remember what are we wanting to accomplish by sitting down with a client? Whether it's a buyer or a seller, but
crystallization.
Good job, Bowen. Love it. That's right. And remember that that's what this whole thing is about, is causing crystallization. Because once people crystallize, they're empowered to buy. So just remember, that's what we're trying to accomplish, is crystallization by doing this. Now, where that came from and why we're doing that again is just remember the top 3 complaints, and I'm just going to kind of abbreviate it, is that we don't return calls is the number 1 complaint. Number 2 is that we don't listen. And then number 3 was that we waste their time. Now, keep in mind when we say that where that comes from, the idea of this, of the frustration that people have that we don't listen and that we waste their time, is because the way that you and I have been trained to communicate is designed to actually block crystallization from occurring. And because remember that the reason for that is 10% of who people are is conscious and 90% of who people are is unconscious. So because 10% of who we are as a personality is conscious, 90% is unconscious, most of what we are doing is unconscious. Meaning when you get in a car and you go and drive, the majority of what you're doing in terms of you driving is unconscious. You don't have to stop and think about doing it. You have done it enough that you can just do it. So as a result of that, 90% of who we are is unconscious. So when you're working with buyers and sellers, what they're wanting to take place is buried in the unconscious. And so our job is to help them then crystallize, because they've got all this information in there of what they're looking for. Now, and again, just reminder of this, and I know I'm going fast, so if you have questions, stop me on this. Because I know I'm going fast because I want to get to what we're going to talk about today. We're just doing a quick refresher of what we had talked about on Tuesday. Is people are going to show up telling you about the feature that they want to buy. They'll show up saying, here's the feature, a home high on a hill with view of the city lights. They'll say they want a garage, however many bedrooms, a big backyard, a this or that. Whatever it is the feature that they're looking for. But keep in mind, it's not the feature they're buying. The feature provides a benefit. And that's really important for you to remember, is the feature that they're talking about provides for them a benefit. So it's really that benefit, or you'll hear me interchangeably say these, benefits or needs. We'll say that interchangeably, meaning the same thing. It's really the benefit or the need that they are buying. So anytime anybody buys anything, they're doing it to fulfill some need or a benefit that they're looking for. So everything that we ever buy is to fulfill some benefit. Now, because not 10% of who we are is conscious, 90% is unconscious, most of the time, the people don't know why they want the feature initially out of the gate. They don't know why they want the feature. All they know is that they want this feature And they're in the unconscious, it is to fulfill some benefit. So said another way, think of it this way. When I talk about features here, the features are, oops, that didn't go very well. The features are going to be tied to the conscious level. The benefits are tied down here into the unconscious level. So when they're doing this and they're saying a feature that they want, it's really not the feature that they want, it's the benefit it provides. And so the key thing for that is if that need can be met in a different feature, and it is quite possible. And in fact, again, this whole thing of buyers are liars, where that comes from is people show up saying what feature they want. And then what ends up happening though, is it's really the need or the benefit they're trying to satisfy. And I told you there are 15 different ones, and I'm going to give you those 15 today, but they're looking to satisfy one of those needs. If they find a feature that will meet those needs in a better way than the feature they initially told you, that's why they will go change their mind. So when we look at it and feel like, well, they said they wanted this and then they went and bought that, the only reason that happens is because they were still looking to fulfill the need that they have. They just found a different feature that actually probably met it better. So that was the story I told you guys about me saying I wanted 1 acre lot. I bought a home on a 1/4 acre. And the reason is it still fulfilled the need that I wanted the 1 acre for, but it fulfilled it in a better way because then I don't have to do all the maintenance on it. So hopefully that all makes sense. So that's what we're trying to do is go from this feature to nailing it down to the benefit. Now, once they realize what the benefit is, that's when crystallization occurs. So again, the way your brain has this information stored is in these discrete locations. So the pictures are in one area, decisions in another area, and the feelings in another area. What we're trying to do is get those to reintegrate. We need the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings to come back together again. And when the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings come back together again, what is going to happen is crystallization. That's when crystallization will occur. And once that's happened, they are now empowered to buy. All right. Everybody good on that? Any questions on that? So we've had a bunch of people join onto Zoom. So for you guys on Zoom, if you have not done it yet, make sure to throw your name in the chat box so that I have a record of you being in the class. I'm actually dealing right now, yesterday, well, it started on Tuesday, I think, but I spent most of the day yesterday dealing with an agent who is telling me they were in class with me. And actually the ones they're disputing, they're saying I was on Zoom and for those classes. And I said, I've got the printout of the chat box of who was on Zoom and your name is not there. So anyway, as I always say that to you guys, that's and by the way, the reason I'll usually repeat it 3 or 4 times for you guys on Zoom is so that when this, like yesterday, the person comes back and says, well, I must have forgot to do it. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you then, because I always say it to you guys like 3 or 4 times throughout the class of like, if you're on Zoom, make sure you throw your name in the chat box. So
is there a way to track how many you've completed so far?
Yeah, I have a spreadsheet. And so if you'll shoot me a text or an email and just have me look at it, I can do that. So, cause yeah, I've got a spreadsheet that I keep track of it, but
okay, awesome. Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. So anyway, that's why, just FYI, that's why I'm constantly saying to you guys, hey, if you're on Zoom, throw your name in the chat box if you haven't. And I usually do it at the beginning, somewhere along the way in the middle, and then at the end, so that when somebody says, I promise I was there, I can say, I don't know what else to tell you. Like I said 3 or 4 or 5 times, throw it in the chat box. So if you guys haven't thrown it in the chat box, you should do that. But I'll assume you did. All right. And I guess if you didn't after that, that's where I feel like you weren't really then paying attention to the class. Okay. So back to this is what we're trying to do is create crystallization. That is the most important thing you could hear from what I'm telling you guys. You have to create crystallization. There's 2 ways to do it. Did we talk about that on Tuesday? There's 2 ways to create crystallization. Do you guys remember that or no?
Directives. Yes, but you said that one of the ways you were going to say today.
So yeah, I said one of the ways of doing it is through what we're going to talk about. The other way is through information loading. Information loading is seeing a whole bunch of properties. So a lot of times people will look at this and be like, well, I don't know if I want to do it or whatever. Here's the thing. You just have, nobody is going to buy until they crystallize. So you have two different choices of going about getting to people to crystallize. One is what we're talking about today. The other is you just go show them a whole bunch of properties. Either way, whatever you want to do works. For me personally, I'd rather not show a ton of properties. So, all right. Now, so from here then, we had talked about that the first thing that we are going to do. So I'm going to actually change this up just a little from what I told you on Tuesday, but there's a reason for it. But we're going to assume for how I'm going to walk you through this today is I'm going to walk you through it like a blueprint. Okay, so I'm going to give it to you in terms of a blueprint. Like if you were building a house, you get blueprints that you're going to follow. So that's how I like to do it. So I'm going to give you today kind of this blueprint overview of this. And so what you want to do is with the clients, you want to say to the client when you're setting the appointment is that we want to sit down and spend 30 to 45 minutes talking about, now, if this is a buyer of a house, talking about what they're looking for in a home. If it's the seller, and we're going to cover the listing presentation and the seller this in a different class. But with the seller, it's I want to sit down and hear what it is that they're wanting to accomplish. So I want to sit down and ask them some questions that will help me understand how to best help them get the home sold. Now, so when I get to the appointment, the first thing I want to do at the appointment is, and I'm going to put this up here at the top, and I always call it the bio. The bio is going to be like this. So when you get to an appointment, whether it's a buyer or a seller, but we're going to today talk mostly buyer, I'm going to sit down with that buyer and I'm going to sit after you've exchanged niceties. You've asked them if they want to drink a water or whatever, you know, a soda, whatever. Now we're ready to start going. What I'm going to do first is just say, before we get started, I just want to tell you a little bit about me. And then you want to talk for 1 to 2 minutes about yourself. And when I say that, I don't mean in terms of real estate. You want to share just personal information about you. Now, I mean, not so personal, but you, what you want to do is give them information, hey, that is going to be tied around just them getting to know who you are. So what you want to do is I want to start my meeting with the buyer or the seller, but like I say, we're going to mostly talk buyers for a second, is I want to do it something like this. Hey, so Vince, thanks for coming. Before we get started, what I want to do is just tell you a little bit about me. And then from there, I would go into, so I have lived in the Salt Lake Valley pretty much my whole life. I grew up out in almost Magna, not quite, but out in that area. I married a girl that lived just down the street from me, actually. We have 3 boys. Ranging in age from 14 up to 26 years old with 3 boys. Love baseball. I've spent, you know, pretty much my whole life with my kids, coaching them in baseball, and some of the other things that we love to do is to go to Disneyland. So most of our family vacations, we end up down in Disneyland. And anyway, so that's the kind of stuff you want to do. So I want to start by saying, let me tell you a little bit about me. And I'm going to share just that type of information. You could talk about like where you went to school, just whatever you want to share that's about you. And here's the key thing. You need to talk for at least 1 minute, but not more than 2. If you don't talk for at least 1 minute, you're not giving them enough information. But if you go longer than 2 minutes, it's too long. Like you're giving too much detail. So think of it as you're wanting to give just these bullet points along the way, okay? So for 1 to 2 minutes, then what I would do is I would say, so Vince, that's a little bit about me. Tell me a little bit now about you. Now, what would you guess they're going to do if I say, if I just went through and gave all this personal information for 1 to 2 minutes and I say, that's a little bit about me. Now tell me a little bit about you. What are they going to tell me back?
They're gonna do the same thing.
That's right. They're going to give back to me that same type of information. Whatever you give to them is what they're going to give back, which is why you start with this, okay? Then the next thing. So once we've done that, the next thing you want to do is in this process, we want to ask for permission. So the second thing we're going to do after okay, so let me kind of just show you. So I say, Vince, here's a little bit about me. Let me tell you, or do you want something to write on?
Yeah.
Here's some, the MLS stuff. So, okay, perfect. All right. So I'm going to say, so Vince, before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about me. Blah, 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 blah. That's a little bit about me. Tell me a little bit about you. He tells me blah, 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 blah. Then I'm going to go into permission. Now, here's what permission sounds like. Permission sounds just like this. In order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you some questions that may feel personal or maybe things you haven't considered. Is that going to be okay? So you always are going to want to start with permission. And I'll say it again for you guys on Zoom so you can write it down. In order for us to determine whether or not I can help you. Now, so this is the key pieces on this. In order for us to determine whether or not I can help you. So us, you want to make sure you're saying us and help. Because here's why. If I said it this way, so Carlos, in order for me to determine if I can work with you, or if I say, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, which one feels better?
Like us, it makes it feel like more inclusive.
Good.
Like,
Yeah. So notice by me saying, in order for us to determine, it feels like, okay, we're doing this together. Whether or not I can help you sounds way better than whether or not I can work with you. So we want to say, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you some questions. Some of them may feel personal or may be personal. They may be things you haven't considered before. Is that going to be okay? And then they're going to say yes. Now, the reason we want to do that, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you some questions that may feel personal or maybe things you haven't considered. Is that going to be okay? The reason I'm doing that is because we're going to now, you'll see as you start to go through this, that sometimes you may start to talk about stuff that's personal in the house and you need to get permission. So when I first learned this process, so I told you guys on Tuesday, I went down to the Bay Area in California to be taught this stuff. And when I was down in California being trained on this, I was so excited about it. I came home and I got off the plane and I was like telling my wife, all right, I got to teach you what I learned. And so I jumped right into describe for me your ideal home. And she started to do it. And then after a little while, she was like, this is weird. I would hate this if somebody did it to me. And I was like, oh no. And so I called up the guy that trained me in it. And I said, hey, like I went to the training and came home. I'm so excited. I sit down with my wife and I say, describe for me your ideal home. And she told me, this is weird. And I was like, what did I do wrong? And he said, did you ask for permission? And I said, it's my wife. Do I have to ask for permission to talk to her about her ideal home? He said, yes, you do. So that's the other thing I want to make sure you guys understand is if you don't get permission, expect potentially that the person may be like, what are you doing? I'm not sure what this is. Why are you doing this? Like, I don't understand. So that's why you want to say, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, need to ask you some questions. They may feel personal, maybe things you haven't considered. Is that going to be okay? They'll say yes. Now that they've done that, now we can go to what we talked about on Tuesday, which is tool number one. So now remember, tool number one is tied to the pictures part of this, okay? And tool number one is going to be directives. Directives are, just as a reminder, and this is the one I always start with the buyer of a house. Describe for me, your ideal home. Okay. Describe for me your ideal home. Now, just again, as a reminder, some of the other things that you will use that are directives are going to be share with me, help me understand, or tell me about. Okay, all of those are directives. Share with me, tell me about, help me understand. But again, just remember that what we're doing is basically just directing their brain. So we're directing them to focus basically in the area we want them to. And describe for me your ideal home. What should happen then is they then start to describe for you the ideal home. While they're doing that, you want to make sure that you're giving, I'm just going to put PF up here, but that stands for positive feedback. You want to give positive feedback. So while they're describing it, I want to be saying like, oh yeah, interesting. Oh, sure. Yeah, makes sense. Really? Wow, cool. That'll be cool. That is exciting. Like that's all positive feedback. But while they're describing to you their ideal home, you want to be giving positive feedback. That's great. Oh, fantastic. Oh, that's exciting. Yes, for sure. And then the next piece of that is part of this is I also am going to use then prompters. Prompters are going to be the what else? Keep going. Or say more. Okay. So what else? Keep going, say more. Now, this is what where I did with you guys, where I showed you on Tuesday, where I had Vince up here and we were doing this pass the baton back and forth. And remember, so what we're going to do is I'm going to say, describe for me your ideal home. They're going to then just start to describe for me the ideal home. As they're doing that, I am then going to fill out the grid. Okay, so remember I drew this on the board and had these little boxes put in there. And what I was saying to you is that you're going to then fill in the grid based upon the information that they give to you. So whatever feature then that they start to talk about, I'm going to put in this first box. And then the next feature they talk about would go in this box. The next one in this box. Now, in terms of filling out that grid, there is no right or wrong way to do it. It's whatever makes sense to you. All that matters is that when you're filling out this grid, that you can interpret what it says. As long as you can interpret it, it doesn't matter what it says, how you do it, anything that way. Okay. Now, and as a reminder, I'm only going to fill in and talk about things they want to talk about. I'm not going to ask them about pieces of the house that I like. So I'm not, if for example, I think a kitchen's really important and they don't ever talk about the kitchen, I'm not going to then go, well, what about the kitchen? Which and remember I said to you guys, is it okay if we let them buy the house they want? And we usually laugh at that because people are like, well, yeah, of course we're going to let them buy the house they want. Well, if that's really true, then I'm not going to ask them, what about the kitchen? Because if the kitchen is important to them, they're going to talk about it. Now, in the event that they don't, for some reason, talk about a feature that is important to them, they'll figure it out later on and tell you, oh, I forgot to tell you. They'll figure it out as you're going through the process. So don't worry about that. And like I said, the hardest part about this is the features of a house that you find to be important. What will happen is the features you find to be important, you'll want to talk about them to that person because you'll go, well, what about this? So like I said, the hardest part in filling this grid out is keep your opinions, your biases out of it. Let them talk about what's important to them. Okay. So I'm going to do the prompters. The what else, keep going. So I say, describe for me your ideal home. They start to describe it. They then stop talking. They figuratively hand me the baton. I'm going to then give them some positive feedback. Hey, you're doing a really good job. You're painting a really good picture. It's helping me really understand what's important. tell me more, or keep going. What else do I need to know? And then, so you're handing them back the baton, and then they should start to talk more that you can fill out this grid. Okay, now, next question for you. How do I know when to stop with this tool 1 directives and the prompters? When do I stop?
When they say they're done.
Okay, good. Yeah. So when what happens is they say something along the lines of, I don't know what else to tell you. That's about it. I don't know what else to say. I think that'll be perfect. Like, you're just going to keep doing this. What else? Keep going. What else? Keep going until they go, yeah, I think that's probably about it. Now, once they've done that, so now we've covered everything. I've just covered with you guys everything we talked about on Tuesday. So now everything from here should be new. Now, once I've done that, and I may have actually said this on Tuesday, but once I'm done with this and they've said that's about it, I want to look back now at my grid to see how much information do I have in there, meaning, like, let's say in this box, I put all this information, and in this box, I've got all this information written down. And this one, I've got that, this one, or here, I've got this, and, you know, maybe I got a ton here, a little bit here. What I'm going to do then is I want to look at the grid to see how much information have I gotten. Now, with that being said, it's going to be a little bit different for every one of you how you do this, meaning, like, your notes that you're keeping on here are for you, not for them. So as long as you've kept detailed notes for you, that's what matters. But what I want to look at is to see, do I have any of the features that they've given me that they didn't really say much about? So let me give you an example. Let's say that I said to them, describe for me your ideal home, and they said, okay, it's got to have an updated kitchen. And then they give me all this box here is all information about the kitchen. And then they go, oh yeah, and I want to have a big backyard. And then they skip over to this one and they say, and there's got to be a family room that is big enough that I can blah, blah, blah. Like, so they mentioned backyard, but then a big backyard, but then they didn't really say much else about it. So now that they have said, that's about it, I don't know what else to tell you, I'm going to look back at my grid and I'm going to look, do I have any that we didn't really get much detail from? Now, this is a test. You guys on Zoom, unmute or type it in the chat box. Why are we doing this?
Crystallization.
All right, good job, Melissa. We got one person on Zoom that said it. Thank you. And actually, Vince mouthed it to me. All right. Yes, I'm doing it to cause crystallization. So I want to pause for a minute and come back to this to say, the reason we're having them give us all this information is we're forcing them to dig into the pictures they have in their unconscious mind about what it is they're looking for in a home, okay? And so the first step to getting them crystallizing, remember, crystallization is the reintegration of the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings. So the reason I'm having them describe all this stuff to me is they're accessing the part of their brain where they've got these pictures stored. And what you'll usually notice is when they are starting to crystallize is you'll find them going, well, this is going to be over. So like you'll see their eyes usually start to kind of either look up, down, or, you know, everybody does it a little different, but however they think, their eyes, you will see, like, they'll look off to the side or they'll look up or they'll look down. But what's going on with their eyes doing that is they're accessing the part of their brain where the pictures are stored. And so what's going on is they're now digging into that, which is the first step to us causing crystallization. Okay. So part of what I want to do then is I'm going to look at my grid to see, is there more information they've given me? So again, back to, they said big backyard. So I'm gonna look now at my grid and I notice, okay, they didn't say much about the backyard and they gave me only a little bit of information about the basement or something. So what I would do then is I'd say, okay, Carlos, you mentioned a big backyard. And then I'm gonna come right back to a directive. Remember, directives can be either describe for me, tell me about, share with me, help me understand.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna say, Carlos, you mentioned a big backyard. Tell me more about the big backyard.
Well, we have kids and then we also have a couple of dogs and, you know, we kind of wanted to make sure they have enough room for them to run around and, you know.
Okay, good. So for you guys on Zoom, if you didn't hear, he said we have a couple kids and we have some dogs and we want enough room for them to run around. So I'd be writing that down in here. Couple kids, couple dogs, room. And then I would go, okay, sure, what else?
That's about it, man. Just like, you know, just to do barbecues with the family and, you know, just to enjoy it on our time off.
Okay, cool. That sounds awesome. So notice I'm gonna do positive feedback. Oh, that's great. Yeah, fantastic. So he said barbecue with some friends, so I'm gonna write that down. So now notice I said, what else? And then he said, that's about it, but then he gave me a little bit more, right?
Yep.
So good. So then I would go over here and say, okay, the other thing you mentioned is the basement. Tell me more about the basement. And then he's gonna blah, blah, blah about the basement. And I'm just gonna write it down. That's what you're gonna do before we go to tool 2. So before going to tool 2, you're looking at this to say, have I gotten all the information? Now, there's a couple of questions that I'm expecting you guys to ask me. So if you have questions, make sure if you guys are on Zoom, interrupt me and ask the question. You two that are here, ask me as well. Because there are a couple of questions that should come up in your mind along this process. And maybe they're not there yet. If they are, great, ask it. If they're not, when you have it, bring it up. Because there are at least 2 that if you guys don't ask, I'm going to be like, all right, you guys on Zoom are watching The Price is Right or something, or Days of Our Lives or whatever. Okay. So any questions before I go?
Well, I can't see the boards very well on Zoom. So under your prompts, it has what else, keep going, and what's the thing on the right?
Oh, this is say more.
Oh, okay, say more.
Yeah, sorry. I'm impressed you can read the other ones. So that's good.
Well, I think it's mostly because you've been saying them, I could kind of piece it together, but the third
Okay.
one, I was like, I don't know what that one is.
Well, I don't even think if you were here, you could, can you guys even read what that says? No, they can't read
I
it. either.
can read the same, but the more.
Yeah.
It's weird.
So yes, thanks for asking. Okay.
So Russ, I don't know if this is like one of the questions you're trying to pull out of us, but at what point, or is there any point where we ask something like, why is that important to you? Like just to go
Yeah.
even deeper for that crystallization process.
Yes, great question. So, and where that's going to come about is down here at the feelings part. That's going to be tool number 3. So that actually the way I like to think of it is, and I should have done this, but so I've got a cup here with some water in it. If I were to have a bottle of water or something and I poured it in here, could I get the water to actually be above the rim? Could I fill this cup up to where the water's actually above the rim? So why? Do you know what that's called?
Capillary action.
Wow, you're giving good. I usually just say surface tension, but that works. So yes, surface tension is basically you could fill this up to where actually the water is above the rim. What happens then though, Vince, if you put one more drop in? Yeah, all of a sudden it just overflows. That one drop, all of a sudden, whoosh. So to answer your question, Melissa, that's what the why question is designed to cause that crystallization. Why is where crystallization should occur. But with that being said, I don't want to ask it too soon, because if you do and they haven't crystallized and you ask them, why do you want it? They'll say things like this. Oh, it'd be just great. It's just what I want. It'd be perfect. So just so you know, if you ever get that type of a response when you ask somebody, so why do you want that? And they just say, oh, it would just be perfect. It's just what we want. Then what you know is they have not crystallized yet. So what that means is we have to loop back up to tool number 2, which is what we're going to do now. So good. should I give you one of the questions or should I wait? Trying to decide, give it to you or wait?
Give it.
All right, I'll give it to you. One of the questions that usually comes up is, what if? So usually these questions are what if questions. So if you have any what if questions, you're probably on the right track of what I'm expecting. Usually what some people will say is, what if I say, describe for me your ideal home? And they say 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage. And you go, that's great. What else? 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, perfect. What else? And they go, that's it. Then what do you do? What do you do if somebody says 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage? Okay, sure. Yeah. What else? Yeah, that's it. Because remember, we're trying to cause crystallization. And remember here, I was like, we got to try to get as much information out of them as we can.
I normally, like, when that happened to me, like, I try to move them and try to find the motivation. So, or different motivations, like could be location or price range, or, maybe work related to, or schools, district, and they're just not saying it yet.
Okay.
But when they put that little bit of a wall, then I try to pull them out, like, so like, okay, where would you like to be ideally, and then they kind of, it takes them out of that part of describing me the actual
Mhm.
house. And then I kind of look back again into that point.
Good.
Kind of-
Okay,
kind
good.
of dig
Yes.
into
So
more.
could you guys on Zoom, could you hear him okay? Or do you want me to repeat?
Repeat.
Okay, so basically what Carlos said is that when he's had that happen, he'll usually then say, well, what about the location that you want to be in? And then they'll usually start to talk location, and then he can say, okay, well, what else do you want in the house? And that they'll usually start to talk, which I like that. I think that's good.
I mean, so what I find is, like, some people don't want to open up first, and then that's why they don't just tell you everything.
Yeah.
But once you take them out of that instant moment of that moving somewhere else, they kind of like forget they were talking about a house. Now they're talking about location. Now suddenly I'm like, we're back to what's important to them in
Yeah.
the house.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I can see that working. So again, he just kind of was saying, sometimes if you can get their mind off on something else and then come back to it, they'll do it. That's good. But what if they just still, if you did that and I said 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage?
Ask them why.
Okay, no, so good. I like your thinking, but remember, I don't want to ask why too soon, because watch what happens. So do it. So 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage, Vince.
Why do you want 3 bedrooms?
That's just what we want. That's the problem is if they have not crystallized and you say, why do you want it? They're gonna say, well, that's just what we need.
Yeah.
So now, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, like, when it comes to that also, I noticed that, like, people are trying to find a specific place, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, that's it. And sometimes they're either downsizing or upgrading. So just kind of like, again, asking, like, do you know what kind of square footage, or do you have a square footage in mind for this home? And they either don't know, or they tell you, we need something, no more than 2,000. And then kind of go back again and, like, what are they trying to do? Are you trying to downsize, or, and they tell you, well, our son is going on a mission, and, our daughter she's going to school somewhere else, and that kind of starts back again into that talking of
Good. Yeah, I love
what
where you.
things are important for
Yeah.
them in the house.
I love where you're going. So for you guys on Zoom, basically he was saying, just kind of asking a few additional questions that's gonna hopefully, like, think of it as like it's a clogged drain or something, and you ask a few other questions that gets the clog out of the way, and then they'll start to open up and the floodgates can go. Yeah, I love that. But what if they don't? So here's why I'm saying that, because, and the good news is it's pretty rare that you run into this where they don't, but I want to just share with you a quick story of an agent who had that happen. And that's why I keep saying, well, what if they don't? What if they don't? Like, I want to take you guys to the extreme on some of these things, because, and here's why, actually. The reason I'm doing this is because what I have found is a lot of times, a lot of agents are scared to actually sit down and do this with a client. And I don't really know why that is, but it is. And usually the fear is, well, what if I sit down and I say, describe for me your ideal house, and they don't give me very much information? So I want to give you the extreme, like here's the worst thing that could happen and how you deal with it. Because then if you understand that, you'll see that it's going to be okay. So I had an agent who came to this class, went through it, sat down with the buyer, said to the buyer, describe for me your ideal home. And here's what the guy said. I want to buy a place that is a 10-minute walk from the University of Utah. And the agent said, oh, so then now remember, once they stop talking and they figuratively hand the baton back to you, you're going to say, okay, so something close to the University of Utah, what else? Or keep going. And he goes, that's it. So if you would have then tried to ask a few other questions, you know, are you upsizing or downsizing? He probably would have just said, actually just trying to get closer to work.
Like, great, you know, like there's actually different options for you. Are you looking for a single family or you be looking for something smaller like a condo?
So just something that's a 10-minute walk from the University of Utah.
Like, period, great, man.
To-
What's your budget?
I don't remember what his budget was, but okay. So yeah, so which you're on the right track, Carlos, and what happened. So the agent comes to me and says, okay, I sat down with this guy. I tried to do this. All I got was 10-minute walk from the University of Utah.
Mhm.
So I said, okay, here's what you do. So now here's the answer. If you are worried about what do you do if somebody doesn't talk? What you do is take that. So again, let's go back to 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage. And then remember here on this filling the grid, I said, don't ever, you're going to ask about a specific thing. The only caveat, the only thing you will ask on this, if they don't bring it up. Now, key piece with this, wait for them to bring it up. But if they don't, the only thing you will ask on this, if they don't bring it up, is location. So if somebody said 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 2-car garage, okay, great. Well, where's it going to be located? So that's where for this agent, now I said, typically you would have said, great, where's this property going to be located? But he already told her that.
Mhm.
10-minute walk from the University of Utah. Great. So here's what I said you do. So what you do then is you go and find 2 or 3 properties that meet that criteria. So I said to her, go find a couple of properties that you can go show this guy that were in his budget within a 10-minute walk of the University of Utah. Okay. And I said, go show him the properties. If you go show him the properties and he buys, great. If he doesn't buy, then what you're going to do is say, okay, let's sit down and talk about what didn't work. So if you ever have somebody who's like, you're struggling with this, go find 2 or 3 properties, go show them to them, come back to the office and sit down and say, do you want to write an offer on this? If they say yes, they want to write an offer, great, then you did the job. But if they don't want to, then you're going to say, okay, help me understand. Remember, that's a directive again. Help me understand what didn't work. And then from there, they'll start to talk about it. You can say, what else? Keep going, say more. See, it loops right back into this. Does that make sense?
Is that a tactic you could use from the beginning? Like, what about your house that you live in, or what is it, the house that you live in now that you might want to change or don't like or would like different?
Yeah, you probably could do that, Janae. You probably could say to them if they, I mean, I wouldn't do it unless it was the scenario we're talking about where they're not giving you much information. Then you might want to say, use that as a directive of, okay, tell me about the home you're in now or the property you're living in now and what works, what doesn't work. So tell me more about that. So you could do it that way for sure. Yeah. All right. Cool. So now that we've got the grid filled out, the next thing that I'm going to do, and actually I'm going to do it even before number 2. So let me find a different color. Not that you guys can really see much anyway. For Carlos and Vince, they can see. The next thing I'm going to do before I go to number 2 is, and I'll underline this, is I'm going to have them rank. So I'm going to have them rank the things we've talked about. Now, let me show you what that looks like. So I would be, so let's say that I had done with Vince, describe for me your ideal home. He's described it. I now looked at this, I found a few holes and I said, okay, Vince, tell me about the backyard, tell me about the basement, da, 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 great, we've done all that, so now it's full. The next thing I'm gonna do is say, okay, Vince, of everything we've talked about, what are the 2 or the 3 that are 3 things that are most important? And then what's gonna happen is he's now should tell me 2 or 3 of the features that we've talked about that are gonna be the most important. Now, here's why I want that. In terms of, and I think I said this to you guys Tuesday, but I'll say it again. In terms of the benefits, when people are buying a home, what they are looking for is there are 2 or 3 key needs. There are 2 or 3 needs that have to be met in this property or they will not buy. So if you've got a couple who's looking at the home and the home has 2 or 3 of their benefits or needs, but the other person, the spouse, their 2 or 3 are not being met, that's when you go and show a property and the one spouse is like, yes, I love it, I want to buy it. And the other one's like, I'm not really sure. What's going on is there are 2 or 3 things that work for the one spouse that aren't working for the other. Or maybe that not that those specifics, but the other person is missing the 2 or 3 key needs. When you're going to get them to buy is when the property meets all of their needs, those 2 or 3. So in this case here, I've got filled out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 boxes here. I'm not going to go through all 7. What I'm saying to them is of everything we've talked about, what are the 2 or the 3 that are most important? Now, what should happen then is they should then identify, the kitchen, the backyard, and the basement, or whatever it is. Then I'm going to say, okay, of those 3, which one is number 1? What's the number 1 most important? And then they, let's say they say the backyard. Okay, which one's number 2? The kitchen. Okay, so number 3 would be the basement. So now notice that. Notice, I want to make sure and point out something to you guys. Notice that what I did with that was I first, like to some extent, you might look at that and think it feels like you took the long road to get there. And if it does, yes, I intentionally did. So you started with saying, what are the 2 or the 3 that are most important? Now, why would I do that? Why would I say, what are the 2 or the 3 that are most important?
Well, a lot of the time, like if they don't focus on the main thing, need or want, then they're always gonna be like, all over the place every time that we go see homes, and they will never be able to make a decision.
Okay, good. I like that.
So
Yeah, so Carlos is saying if you don't have them focused on just the most important things, they'll have a billion things going on and they can't focus. Okay, good. There's more to it than that though. Why am I saying the 2 or 3 that are most important? Why am I not just saying what's the most more important? What's the number 2 most important? What's the number 3?
Because they might not have an order to what's more important to them, or it might be the most important. Number 1 might be different in 2 days than it was when you asked them.
Okay. Yeah, so here's the idea. If by me saying what are the 2 or the 3, what I'm really communicating is I'm saying to them, what are the things that are like absolutes? But I'm saying it without saying that. I'm just saying, what are the 2 or 3 that are most important? What's going to happen then is they're going to give me 2 or 3. They might give you 4. But what happens is they then tell you what are going to be the non-negotiables that show up. Okay. That's why you're going to do this is say, give me the 2 or 3 most important. Then once they've given me the 2 or 3, now I'll have them rank them in order of 1, 2, or 3. Now, so if they only gave me 2, I would just then worry about those 2. So essentially what I'm saying to you is this. People buy in 2s and 3s. Typically the property's got to have 2 or 3 key things they're looking for. this narrows you down to figure out, is it 2 or 3? But if I just said, give me the top 1, 2, or 3, they're going to give you 1, 2, and 3. What if though, number 3 really isn't a key decision-making thing
Mhm.
to them, but because you just said, give me 1, 2, and 3, you're now going to focus on all 3, and you may be creating more work for yourself, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Versus if you just say, what are the 2 or 3? Like, it's possible that somebody like says just the kitchen. Like, I don't really care about anything else. So maybe it's only 1. But so by saying what are the 2 or 3 puts it into a scenario where you're going to find out what is the most important. Okay. So now that I've done that, I'm going to circle those like we did there. Then the next step is
Hey,
number
Russ,
yeah.
Russ, can I back up for just a minute? Sorry, I had a phone call come through, so I missed part of that. So are we saying, what are the 2 or 3 most important features to you? Or like, what's the specific thing about the 2 or 3 that we're asking?
Yeah, so yeah, thanks. I'm just saying, so of everything we've talked about, what are the 2 or 3 that are most important? And meaning features, yes. So
Okay.
that they should then say, well, it's this and this, or this, and this. Is that good? I'll take that as a yes. Okay. So the next.
Yes,
thing-
I did say yes, but I was muted. Sorry.
I saw that
That's
you were muted, so I assumed that. So, okay. So number 2 then is going to be modifiers. So the next thing on our list here is we're going to go now to, in this blueprint, is now that we've done this and we've ranked them, we're now going to move on to modifiers. Modifiers are going to be, now, so remember I said up here in the directives, once you say, describe for me your ideal home, you don't want to talk again, other than to say positive feedback and what else, keep going. Along the way, you're going to want to ask a bunch of questions. They're going to say something that gets you excited. You're going to want to talk about it. Don't talk about it until modifiers. Now that we're to the modifiers, I can ask whatever questions I want. It's just up here, I don't want to ask any questions. Just listen. Just you listen to them and take notes. That's it. Number 2 then is the modifiers. Modifiers are who, what, when, where, and how. Okay. So modifiers are who, what, when, where, how. Now, notice we already talked about the reason why on this, but notice I left off the why. We still haven't used why. The reason I'm not asking any why questions yet is because number 2 here is designed to access the part of the brain where all the decisions are made. So now what we're going to do is we're asking who, what, when, where, how questions. The why accesses the feelings part of the brain, and we don't want to go there yet. So now with that being said, there are times you may ask a why as part of the modifiers, but be very, very careful, because if you ask why too soon, they're going to go, just, that's what I want. I don't know. Like, I just want it. But once you have asked enough of these modifiers, which by the way, on the modifiers, you're typically going to need to ask between 5 to 7 questions. Between who, what, when, where, how questions. Does that throw you off a little, Vince? What do you look like you were like, oh, good. Okay. The look on your face for a minute was almost like, I gotta ask 5 to 7. Like, so, okay, you're good. All right. So the modifiers, you're typically going to ask who, what, when, where, how questions about the feature. So let's say, just for the ease of use, let's just say that the kitchen was number 1 feature, or yeah, the number 1 feature. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take that box. So I'm going to take just that box here, the kitchen that they talked about. I'm going to take the kitchen, and I now want to ask between 5 and 7 modifiers or directives. So I usually start it like this. So think of it this way. I'm going to usually start with a directive and then come over here and ask the modifiers. So let me show you what I mean. I would say to Carlos, so I'm starting in the modifiers now. So I'd say, Carlos, picture yourself in the kitchen tell me what you see. So what I'm doing is now I'm giving them this instruction to their brain. Go access the part of your brain where the kitchen is stored, where those pictures are stored. Tell me about what you see is now, tell me about the decisions you've made about it. What should happen then at that point is they should start to say, well, it would have this island bar and it's going to have a bunch of cabinets and I need a window and the da-da-da and this and it's got that. Now, as they're telling me all that stuff about the kitchen, you want to be listening to what they're saying and taking more notes to it on your chart here. But you're going to be listening for questions you could ask about, like, who's going to use the kitchen? What are you going to use the whatever? What are you going to use it for? When do you use it? Where will it be located? How are you going to use it? So ultimately, what type of cabinets are going to be in there? How many cabinets are you going to have? What type of appliances would be there? How much space, counter space do you need? Who is going to be in there cooking with you? What other things are going to be stored in the kitchen? Like what, you're just going to ask minimum of 5 to 7 who, what, when, where, how questions. Now, again, the idea of this is we've gotten them. The reason I start with picture yourself in that room, tell me what you see, is I can listen to where if they say a big island bar, part of what you're looking for is anytime they use an adjective, you're probably going to need to ask an additional question. If they say something like big windows, okay, well, I know what big means to me, but I don't know what it means to them. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. I had a client that I was taking through this process. I said, picture yourself in the kitchen and tell me what you see. And she said, well, it needs to be a big kitchen. And I said, okay. And she then was talking more about the kitchen. Well, anytime somebody leaves something like, I need a lot of windows. Well, how many is a lot? Like in my mind, a lot is like what we've got in this room, but to them, it might be 2. So this lady says, I need a big kitchen. And I said, okay, how big is a big kitchen? Now, a lot of times what people will say when you do that is, depending on their personality style, they may say, well, I can't tell you dimensions. Like, I'm not sure how big is. And I just say, okay, in relation to the room that we're in, how big would it be? Half the size, twice the size, 4 times the size? Like, in relation to this room we're in, what would it be? So this lady says this, and you guys on Zoom aren't going to be able to see as well this, but I said, how big's a kitchen? And she said, well, I don't really know the dimensions. And I said, well, in relation to this room. And she went like this, probably about like that. So for you two that are here, how big of is that a big kitchen? Like, that's tiny. And I was like, in my mind, I didn't say this, but in my mind, I'm thinking that's a big kitchen. Like, and I said, okay. And obviously she must have been able to tell that, like, from the look on my face or something, that I was a little surprised. Because then she said this, ultimately what we need in the kitchen is enough space to where somebody could be standing at the stove and somebody else at the sink at the same time. She said, the apartment we live in right now, the stove is right here and the sink's right behind. And like, if I was standing at the stove, somebody else couldn't stand and do dishes while one person's. So she said, so for me, a big kitchen is just anything bigger than that. And I'm like, well, pretty much every kitchen is going to be bigger than that, like in a house, right? So that's what we want to do, is you want to really listen to what they're saying. And when they say things like, I need a lot of cabinets. Okay, well, how many is a lot of cabinets? What does that mean? So, and again, why we're doing that is it's forcing their brain into where the decisions have been made, because they're there. They've got them already there. They're just in the unconscious. They're not consciously aware of what these things are. So by you saying, well, how many windows do you need? Or how big is a big window? And then they're going to go, oh, well, and they'll tell you what it means. So, which again is what we need them doing, is accessing that part of the brain. So I'm just going to continue to ask questions. Who, what, when, where, how questions about feature number 1, whichever one I'm doing. Are we good? I'm going to take no response as a you're good. And Vince is giving me a thumbs up. He's
Yeah, good. We're good.
Vince is pretending he's
Yes,
on.
we're good.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Vince is pretending he's on Zoom with his camera on and he just goes, let it. All right. Cool. So, okay, so I'm going to ask them those questions. Now, once I've done that for that box, then I can go to tool number 3. Uh-oh. Sorry, somebody's got some background noise, so I'm going to mute it. Okay. Feel free to unmute again. So then number 3 is going to be what we call the tag. So the tag now is going to be tied to this. The tag is going to be, and I'll explain tag in just a second. The tag is going to be, what does blank mean to you? Sorry, Lisa, I'm going to mute you. We can hear your pen in the background. So but if you have a question, unmute. What does blank mean to you? Your notes you were taking, we can hear in the background. So I just muted you. So, but you're good. All right. What does blank mean to you? Or why? So here's where the why comes into place. Why is blank important? Okay. So let me show you what that looks like. So let's say to Carlos, I said, so picture yourself standing in the kitchen. Tell me what you see. He tells me. I start asking questions. Well, who's going to use it? How often do you use it? What kinds of things do you cook in there? How many people would you have in the kitchen? How big of countertops? How many cabinets? What type of wood would the cabinets be? How many appliances? What type of appliances? Where, just all these who, what, when, where, how questions. He's now answered all these questions, minimum 5 to 7. So then I say, so Carlos, what does having that kitchen mean to you? Then what should happen is they should either say one of the 15 benefit words, which I'll give you in just a minute. They should either say one of the 15 benefit words, or they'll talk around one of the benefit words. So they might not say it, but they'll say something that is the equivalent to it, or enough that you'll go, oh, okay, that's what they're talking about. Okay. So done right, that's what it should be. So now the reason we call it a tag is I worked, growing up, my neighbor across the street owned a couple of grocery stores. And I remember I was 12 years old and I said to my mom, I want to try to get a job at John's grocery store. And I said, will you call him and ask him if he could give me a job? And one of the best things my mom ever did was she said, no, but you can go ask him for a job. And I said, okay. And so I right then, got up, went and got my shoes on or whatever, I don't know. But I remember I just immediately went out the door and went over to knock on his door. Now, being a parent now, I'm guessing my mom probably called him up and was like, hey, John, FYI, he's coming to ask you for a job. And anyway, so I go over and I knock on the door and I say, hey, John, I'm 12. I want to work at your grocery store. Can you give me a job? And he goes, I think I do need somebody to help clean the meat department, which now this is so funny because you would never get away with this today. So basically what happened is at 12 years old, he gave me a job that I would ride my bike, and it was about 3 miles from my house to his store. I'd ride my bike the 3 miles from my house to his store. And then when I got there, I would go into the meat department and the butcher would have been done butchering up all the meat for the day. And I would then go clean all those machines. So I was cleaning the grinder, the saws and everything. I look back in that and go, okay, OSHA would never allow a 12-year-old today to go in and clean these machines. But anyway, that was my job. But that's not what I really wanted to do. What I really wanted to do is go out and stock the shelves and that kind of stuff. So I remember I went to him, which this is funny too. I don't know why this is, but I went to him and after I had cleaned the meat department for a while and I said, hey, I want to be a stalker. I don't want to keep cleaning the meat department. And he goes, oh no, you got to be 14 to do that. So apparently at 12, you can go work with grinders and all the, these machines that could cut your hand off. But you can't go put stuff on a shelf until you're 14. I don't know why that was. But anyway, when I finally turned 14 and I could actually now become a stalker, like I could stock the shelves. What we had these pricing guns that you would like on this little knob dial the price in, and then it was like a little, you'd pull the trigger and it would create a sticker that you would then put on the thing so that all the cans and everything had a price sticker. Well, they called that tagging. So that's kind of the idea of, for me, or I guess you could even think of it as the way you think of tagging now is, gangsters go out and spray paint stuff, whatever, you tag it. That's what we're doing with this, okay? So that's the idea is now that we've gotten all this, we're now gonna tag this feature. So we're gonna tag the feature to what's the benefit that is associated with that feature. You follow me? Okay. So, and the way I do that is by saying, what does that kitchen mean to you? And then they should either say the word, the benefit word, or they'll describe it. So they either say the benefit word or they'll describe the benefit word. So in the event that they describe it, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to summarize back to them what they said. So, but how I do that is I say, it sounds like, or you could say seems like, it sounds like what you're looking for in the home is, so then I'm going to nail it down to the need, that one of those 15 key benefits, which I'll give to you in just a minute. So I'm going to, if they summarize, I'm going to say, so if I understand you correctly, it sounds like, or some version of that. If I understand correctly, what you're looking for in a home is fill in the blank. Make sense? There's Luz.
Sorry, I know I won't get ready.
I was going to say only an hour and 10 minutes
I
late,
know.
but.
I know that, but I needed to fix my email
Oh, good.
and all of that.
Okay, good. All right. So now that I've gone through this, I've done the directives, I've done the 5 to 7 modifiers, I've done the tag, we've landed on what the benefit is. Then what I usually do is come over here to on the chart in this grid, and I'm going to write down the benefit. So let's just say that for the kitchen, it was
Family time.
yeah, which really would be love, basically. So then I'm going to write love is the benefit. So if they're saying family time, what they mean is love.
Yeah.
I'm going to put love as that. So in essence, think of it this way. They've told me about what they need is, kitchen, this kitchen, but really what they want is someplace to show their family they love. That's what they're really looking for. So now that I've identified that, I'm going to then say that to them. So what we're looking for is in this kitchen is someplace you can show your family how much you love them. They're going to say, yep, that's exactly what it is. Great. Picture. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the next one, the next feature. And I'm going to say, okay, the next thing you talked about was the backyard. And then I go right over to here again, a directive. Picture yourself in the backyard. Tell me what you see. They're going to tell me. Then I'm going to go to, well, who's going to use the backyard? What are you going to do back there? How big's the garden going to be? How many trees? How big is a big tree? How much grass? What are you going to, who's going to use it? How often do you use it? Where's it going to be? Like all of that, right? I'm going to ask 5 to 7 the questions. Then I'm going to say, what does having that backyard mean to you? They should then say one of the benefit words. So we'll just say in this case, it's entertainment. Okay. They like to entertain. So entertain is, so then I'm going to say, so it sounds like what you're looking for in the backyard is really someplace that you can entertain. Yes. Great. Now we'll go to number 3. You mentioned the basement. Picture yourself in the basement. Tell me what you see. Who's going to use it? How many bedrooms? How many rooms are going to be down there? How big would the rooms be? What would the flooring look like? What color are the walls? How many windows? Like whatever they've asked, I'm just going to ask all these questions. Then I'm going to say, what does having that basement mean to you? They are then going to tell me either the benefit word or they're going to describe the benefit word. And then I'm gonna say, so it sounds like what you're looking for, if I understand, in the basement is what? They say yes, great. Okay, we good? Any questions?
Sorry, since I was late, what exactly are you talking about? Yeah, you don't have to explain.
I was gonna say, it will take me an hour and 10 minutes to explain to you what we're talking about. What we're talking about is a buyer interview right now. If when you're meeting with a buyer to sit down and find out what they're looking for in a home, this is the process. All right, go ahead. Carl.
Basically, this whole thing is just the process of bringing the client into making a full inventory of all those things before you start tapping into their emotional and the real needs, so they can make that decision and move forward and decided, yeah, it's time to do this or it's time to buy.
Yeah, so the answer is yes, but really what I'm trying to do is what? Cause what?
Personalization.
Okay, good. We got the two people in the room, nobody on Zoom, but good. I'm sure you guys said it, you're just all muted, right? That's what happened. Melissa gave me a thumbs up, so that's good. All right. So yeah, what we're trying to do really with this is we're just trying to cause crystallization, because people buy in 2s and 3s. We're helping them crystallize on really what it is they're looking for in the home. Once we've done that, now they're empowered to buy. So yeah, now they're going to be, now, which by the way, actually that leads to the next thing. Once I've landed on the benefit, when we go look at the home, I don't talk about the feature. I don't talk about the kitchen. I talk about the benefit. So meaning, let's say that it was love. So what I would do then is when we go look at a house, I'm not going to say, remember all this who, what, when, where, how stuff came from? I don't talk about any of the who, what, when, where, how. Instead, I talk about, does this kitchen look like it would be a place you could show your family how much you love them? That's what, you don't talk about the feature, you talk about the benefit. Is this kitchen going to provide you the ability to show your family how much you love them? And then what happens, because like what you said, Carlos, is right. Now, instead of looking at it at the 10%, they're looking at it from the 90%. They're looking at it from the emotions of, yeah, this would work. So that's what we're trying to do with all of this, is we move it to where we don't talk about the feature, we talk about the benefit. Everything we do is going to be about the benefit from then on. So it changes the way we're going to approach it.
So Rose, what you're saying is how to talk to clients when you're showing them houses. Is that what it is?
Well, this is before you're showing them.
Okay.
But yes, but once we've done this, then yes, now I know how to talk to them while I'm showing the house.
Okay.
Because we talk about the benefit, not the feature. It's what's the benefit going to give to them, not the feature. Okay. All right, so now let's do this. So now let me give you the 15 benefit words. So I'm going to give you guys the 15 benefit words. And then after that, then I'm going to say, okay, now what's the next step? So we're getting real close here. All right, so the 15 benefit words. Now, I'm going to give these to you in, there's not really an order to them, meaning I'm not going to give them to you necessarily in the order of like most used to least used, but I will kind of point out to you, I'm just going to give them to you mostly as they come to my head. But so the first one is comfort. Okay. The first benefit word is comfort. So on Tuesday, I had some of you guys tell me why you would want a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights. And somebody said, well, I like the way it makes me feel. Well, in essence, when they say that, what you're describing to me is comfort. Comfort is a sense of ease. So think of it that way. If somebody is describing the word, the benefit of comfort, the need, what they're talking about is creature comfort. So think of it that way, as it's a sense of ease, but it's a creature comfort. So like I have a little 16-year-old Shih Tzu, and she jumps up on the couch, and we have a blanket there, and that's her blanket that she lays on. And she will take that blanket and she'll like push it with her nose, kind of fluff it up. And then she gets on and she'll kind of stomp on it for a second. And then she'll lay down, and then she'll stand up and turn around and then lay down. And then she'll stand up and turn around, and then she'll go, and then she doesn't move. That's comfort. Okay. Comfort is, so if somebody's if what they're looking for in the benefit that they're looking for in the feature is comfort, they're going to be talking to you about how it gives me a place to go and unwind and to be able to just kind of decompress for the day, blah, blah. What they're talking about is what they're looking for in that feature is comfort. Okay.
So comfort will be something like relaxation, some.
Yep,
something
could be
like that.
relaxation. Yep, if there's, but just, it's a sense of ease. It's the, that's comfort, okay? Next one is convenience. Convenience is about ease of use. Okay, so sometimes that could be the kitchen. It could be about the kitchen and they want the layout of it to end up being just, it would be convenient. Just to have all of my spices in one area or whatever. Maybe they've talked about this spice rack or something, I don't know. Like, but convenience is ease of use. It also could be location. Like if they're talking about the location of where they live, and it would just make it convenient to get to work. It could make it convenient to get onto the freeway, like whatever. But whatever it is they're talking about that way, convenience is ease of use, okay? Next is love. Then, since we already did that one before here, love is going to be about that, you know, bonding, spending time with family, that kind of stuff. It's showing them that they love them. Okay? Next is, let's do, since we already talked about it, entertain or entertainment, but to entertain. That, and that's usually going to be like, we like to have people come over and have parties, and I need enough space and blah, blah, blah. All that kind of stuff is about entertaining. Okay. Next is recreation. So recreation is about going and having fun and that kind of stuff. Like for me, that was one of my benefits is like, I don't want to have to work in the yard, which is why I said initially I wanted a 1 acre lot, but I didn't really want a 1 acre lot. I just wanted access to have some place to do the recreation with my boys, and doing it on the neighborhood park right outside of my backyard is better than in my backyard. All right, next is privacy. Privacy is just exactly what you're thinking is, you know, the seclusion, they want a place to get away, whatever. Okay. Next is prestige / esteem. So prestige or esteem. And I usually do it prestige / esteem. So prestige is going to be, you know, how other people see me. So like if I'm saying I want this house because I want my friends to come over and be really impressed that I live there, that's prestige. If I'm saying it as, you know, when I drive home and I pull up to my neighborhood or my house, I want to be like, yeah, I made it, I live here. That's esteem, okay? So prestige and esteem, think of them as a heads and tails of a coin kind of a thing, is they're related, but not exactly the same. All right, next is safety. Safety is about the physical safety. Okay. Next is, and actually these two are somewhat related. In fact, I've thought about putting them on the, like saying there's actually 14 and putting safety and security on one line, because security really, I would, if I were writing it down, if I were you, I would put in parentheses after security is peace of mind. So safety is about your physical safety. Security is the peace of mind that physical safety gives to you. So I really feel like those two are related.
So really, the security will be a byproduct of the safety.
That's right. That's what I'm saying is that really, because typically if you had like a mom saying, well, I want a fenced in backyard. Okay. And you say, what does having a fenced in backyard? Well, then I wouldn't have to worry about my kids running out in the street and getting hit by a car. Okay. Well, the fenced backyard is about the physical safety, but it really is for the mom, it's the peace of mind, the security that that's not going to happen. So that's why I say they're really pretty related. I have just found typically when people are talking about safety, they actually mean security. It's the peace of mind that's going to give to them. Does that make sense? Okay. Next is value. Value is about making money. Okay? Value is about making money. So if you had somebody that's saying, hey, I want to get this property and we're only going to be here for 2 years and then we're going to transfer out. Like a perfect example of that. In fact, can't remember if my first ever closing, I can't remember if it was a buyer or a seller now. I mean, I remember my first buyer closing and my first seller. I just don't remember which one happened first now. But my first buyer that I did, actually, my sister worked up at the University of Utah. And her job was after these students would finish medical school and they were going to start their residency, they were coming in from all over the country to work as a resident in pediatrics up at the University of Utah. And my sister was in charge of that. So I'm a brand new licensed agent. I talked to my sister and she's like, hey, I got all these people that are going to be coming in. Oh yeah, it was great. Yeah, she was a great
You got all
source.
those doctors.
Yeah, well, and I mean, they weren't making much to start out with, but
Yeah.
down the road, like, right. So, but usually they were coming in saying, we're just going to be here for 4 years while I do my residency. And then we may or may not stick around. Okay, so in that scenario, they might be like, I want to buy a property that in 4 years from now, I'll be able to make a profit to leave if we do, or we'll sell it and go buy a new house. Okay. So that's value. Value is about making money. So if they're worried about value, it's making money. Economy is about saving money. So if they're worried about economy, if they're talking about triple pane windows, thick insulation, 2x6 walls, a high efficient furnace, all of that kind of stuff, what they're talking about is economy. They're talking about saving money. Okay, that's what's important to them. All right, next. Let's see. What am I forgetting? What number is anybody numbering them?
11.
We're on number 11, or we just did 10?
No, you did 11.
Oh, so we're doing 12.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's get this one out of the way then. Next one is sex. So I don't think I have to explain anything beyond that, do I?
It related to a house, kind of funny.
Well, that one's one that doesn't come up a ton, but it actually does come up. Of like the one time we had it was a guy who was talking about the backyard and having a hot tub and him and his wife spending time out there, and like what he was looking for in the house was good sex, apparently.
So he was looking for privacy, so he could enjoy himself with his wife or whosoever.
Yep, but it was sex, not just privacy.
All right. All right.
Okay, next then is aesthetics. So aesthetics is like the way it looks. So usually when you're coming up with that as the benefit, what will happen is they'll be talking to you about like detailed things. Like, for example, I've only had that show up one time with a buyer, but what they had said is they wanted to buy an older home. And as we were talking through and asking these questions, what they started, they're like, I just want one of those houses that the doorknobs have etching on the doorknob. I'm like, okay, when you start talking about etching on a doorknob, they're worried about the aesthetics. That's what's important to them. So if they're talking about crown molding or the way the brick looks, that kind of stuff, that's aesthetics. Okay. All right. Let's see. Next is self-actualization. So self-actualization is kind of in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self-actualization is the pinnacle. Like that's basically like when it's in Maslow's hierarchy of needs is once all of your other needs have been met, you're worried about self-actualization. Basically living your purpose is probably another way of saying it. So if somebody is doing that, it's like they're going to be talking about, by me getting this house is going to allow me to basically live my purpose of why I was created, kind of a thing is what self-actualization is.
So
Okay.
that has to be the perfect house for them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So another way I would say it is think of it as like a poet or an artist or something of like if there are some people that like are artists, but then they'll finish it and they just throw it away. They don't sell it, they don't do anything with it. It's just, I just feel like I'm doing what I was created for when I do this and then I throw it away and start over. Like that's self-actualization. Okay. All right. What number is that? Am I missing?
14.
Oh,
One more.
what am I missing?
One more.
Usually it's self-actualization that I forget. All right, let me look at my notes.
Maybe you want to call them out and we'll tell you we have it.
Oh, I know what it is. There it is. Help. That's the last one. Help is, and that's gonna be like somebody saying, I need a single story home. I need a 1-story home because I have bad knees. Like I had a knee replacement, I can't go up and down stairs. Or I need a pool because I gotta go swim laps because I had a heart attack or whatever. And so I have to work out and like, that's gonna be health related. Or I think Melissa said on Tuesday, it looks like she dropped off, but that she wanted to be up out of the smog and, the inversion in the winter. That would be health as well. Okay.
I had a family, well, 2 different families actually. One of them wanted to be closer to obviously hospitals. Right, and another one, one of their kids would have some sort of but he was going to special school, special needs school for kids.
Oh, okay.
So they wanted to stay closer to that
Okay, so and that could be, so all of that,
location.
like it could be convenience, like it could have been like, we want the convenience of being close. It also could have been of like, I want to be close by because I love them and I want to be able to show them like I'm always going to be there. Like, that's the thing to keep in mind is the hardest part on this is during this whole process right here is you trying to stay neutral. Like as they're describing all of this stuff here, what you want to do is be thinking it could be anything. Even though that it might sound like if they're talking about being close to that and stuff with their kids, you could probably go, okay, it's probably not sex. Like, that's probably like you could somewhat eliminate a few, but don't try to say, oh, it's this. Because until you say, what does that feature mean to you? Once you say that, they should either say one of these words or they'll describe it. And then you can go, oh, okay, that sounds like what you're talking about is blah. That makes sense?
Sorry, could you tell me which one goes after love? I kind of missed that one.
Love is entertain or entertainment. You can put it either way, entertain or entertainment.
Thank you.
Yep. Did you get the others? You got the rest of them? Just not that one?
Yes, I got all of them. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so once you have done that and we've identified these 3 key needs, the next thing that we're going to do then down here is we're going to talk money with them. The next thing you're going to do then is ask them, okay, great. Now, how do you plan to pay for this? And they're either going to say cash or get a loan. Okay. If they're cash, we want a proof of funds letter. If they're a loan, we want a pre-approval letter. So how do you plan to pay for it? Cash, loan, and then great. I need a proof of funds letter if it's cash, or I need to get a pre-approval letter from your lender. Once you've done that, the last thing you're going to do that is, I call this after setting the appointment. Oh, actually, I skipped one. Hang on. The next thing I want to do is the buyer broker, actually. So after money is going to be, let me tell you how I work. And basically what I want to say to them is, let me tell you how I work. I'm going to go out and look at every home in the market in your price range, but I'm only going to show you the ones that meet your needs. So what that means is if we're going to go look at 3 or 4 properties, I will have typically previewed 10. Sorry. If we're going to go look at 1 property, I will typically have previewed 10. So if we're going to go look at 3 or 4, I will preview 30 to 40. I'm willing to do that if you'll commit to working exclusively with me. That's how I'm going to get them to commit to the buyer broker. Is let me tell you how I work. I'm going to go out and look at every home in the market in your price range, but I only am going to show you the ones that meet your needs. I've typically found I have to look at 10 to find one that would work for you. So if we're gonna look at 3 or 4, I will have previewed 30 to 40. I'm willing to do that, provided that during the time we're working together, you'll commit to working exclusively with me. They say yes, great. Then I'm gonna do, after setting the appointment, the last thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna basically say to them, so Carlos, we're gonna go out and look at properties on Saturday.
Okay.
When we go out and look at these homes, we're going out there to find you a house to buy. So after every house we look at, I'm gonna ask you, do you wanna write an offer on this house? A no is just as important to me as a yes. I don't want you to feel pressure. I just want to make sure that I'm not wasting your time looking at properties that don't work for you. So after every house, I'm gonna ask you if you wanna write an offer. And a no is just as important to me as a yes. So I'm not looking to, I don't want you to feel pressure. But is it okay if I ask you after every house if you wanna write an offer?
Yes.
Okay, great. So now we go out and look at a house, come out. You want to write an offer on this house?
No.
No? Okay, great. Let's go take a look at the next one. So we go to the next one, come out. Do you want to write an offer on this house?
Yes.
You
this is
do?
one.
Great, let's go write an offer then. Now, what if he says no? Then we go to the third one. Do you want to write an offer on this house? What if he says no? Then what I'm going to do is say, okay, here's how I handle it. If I go show them 3, maybe 4 properties, but I don't ever want to show more than 4 at one time.
Mhm.
I show 3 or 4 properties, come back to the office, he didn't want to buy them. I'm gonna say, I apologize. Like, here's how I do it. I apologize, Carlos. The worst thing I could do is go waste your time looking at houses that don't work for you. Like, I don't want to do that. So help me understand what, so notice what I'm doing. I'm going right back. Help me understand what I missed. What do I need to change? See, I totally take the responsibility of like, hey, I don't say this, but in essence, I'm saying I screwed up.
Yeah.
We were going to find a house for you to buy and we didn't find one. My fault. What did I miss in the process of our talking that I need to change for the future? So what needs to be different? Tell me about what you liked or didn't like on the houses. What would need to change? Then bam, bam, he tells me. I go back into this to figure out, did I miss something? Did he really crystallize? You know, did I just miss what he was looking for? What was it? Then I'm going to go show him a few more properties. Come out of those. Do you want to write an offer? Yes, great. Let's go write the offer. No, then I say, great. Let's go to the next one. Do you want to write this one? No. If I get that again, no, I'm going to come back to the office again. Hey, I apologize. I really want to find properties that will work for you, that you would want to write an offer. My goal is to have us go look at the properties and you want to buy the first one we see. So what do I need to change? They tell me. In the event I've done that 3 times and they don't buy, I start to question, are they really a buyer? Because it may be that they're not really a buyer. Okay, so I'll give you a quick story and then we'll be done. I had a guy, and I may have told you this already, so I apologize if I did, but even if I did, you won't remember, so I'll tell you again, okay? I had a guy that I was showing properties to. Well, actually, let me ask this and you guys tell me. Did I tell you the story about the guy where he lived in Orem but worked out by the airport at L3?
I heard you say.
You've heard me say it before?
I have.
Did you guys on Zoom hear it? I see Lisa shaking her head. No, good. Here we go.
The one that was getting divorced.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here's what happened is I get this call. I don't remember where the guy came from. He lived in Orem, worked at L3 by the airport. He was getting a divorce and called and said, hey, if I'm getting a divorce anyway, I might as well live close to work. Great. So I go and I do this and I'm showing him properties, and he's not buying. Now, which by the way, his key need was value. I want to get a good deal. I want a property that I can make money on. Great. I finally find the perfect house. Exactly what he was wanted, met this need. It was a killer deal. Like it was probably close to $20,000 underpriced. And I was like, I found the property. Like you could buy it and turn around and sell it for $20,000 more. We go look at it and I tell him, we got to hurry. Like we got to get an offer in quick because other people are going to figure out this is a good deal. We need to get it. He says, great, let's write an offer for the list price. And I said, okay, actually, no, less than list price. He wanted to write it 7,000 less than list price. And I said, okay, but you run the risk that we're going to end up in a bidding war, which is going to drive the price up. That's okay. We write the offer. I send it over. The Agent calls me, hey, we've got another offer. We need your highest and best. I call him up. We got to do highest and best. Like I'm thinking he'll at least go to list price. He goes, nah, if I can't get it for that price, I don't want it. And I was like, this meets your needs. And he's like, yeah, let's just see what happens. And I can tell you what's going to happen. You're not going to get the house. Well, let's just see what happens. Okay. After that is when I realized his real key need was actually love. And what I found out later on is he was divorced, but the next door neighbor let him rent the house next door. So mom lived here, next door was dad. The kids could just like, it was almost like you just went to the other room in the house. Like they could just bounce back and forth. He didn't want to give that up. And so 5 years later, the guy called me. Hey, do you remember how you had set up on the MLS and it would send me properties? Yeah. The agent I'm working with now doesn't know how to do that. Can you help him? I said, I'll be happy to help him. By the way, did you ever buy a house? Nope. 5 years later. See, that's why with this process, you'll figure out if you go do this and you've landed on the benefits, they've crystallized and they don't buy, you got to kind of start to wonder, are they a real buyer? Because he wasn't.
Well, I just find it kind of funny that he's calling you, that you have
Oh,
worked
yeah.
for him so much in the past and didn't do nothing. Now he's calling you for help, you to help, because he has another agent.
Yeah. No, I thought it was funny too, but I also was like, I don't want to work with him.
So
'Cause I
go with the other one.
Yeah, I was like, that's fine. Tell your agent to call me. The agent never did, but I was just like, yeah. So, anyway. Okay. Thanks for being here. So Tuesday, next week, actually, no classes. Yeah, there was supposed to be a company event, like it's still showing on the company calendar, but it didn't happen. So I didn't block out any classes, but I'm also gone Thursday and Friday next week. So anyway, so no classes next week. But then the next week, there's not a class on the 9th either because Summit. So the 11th would be the next class, and we're going to do listing presentations. So,
It's my birthday.
oh, is it?
Yeah.
All right. So the 11th will be our next class, and it's listing presentation. So we'll go through how to do the listing.
When will that be?
On the whatever day I said, 11th,
August 11th?
August 11th. So nothing till August 11th. Hey guys, thanks for being here.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Russ.
If you didn't put your name in the chat box, make sure you do. All right.